Hi, and welcome to today's discussion. What I will be talking about is what is a stakeholder within project management. And then I'll be going into how we identify project stakeholders, their roles and responsibilities, engaging and managing those stakeholders, and finally, how they influence and impact the project. Firstly, before we do that, let me just give you a brief definition. It's a textbook definition that I'm going to give you. So, in project management, a stakeholder is an individual, group, or organization that can affect or be affected by the project's outcome. Stakeholders are people who have interest or a stake in the project and can include sponsors, team members, customers, users, suppliers, and other parties involved in or impacted by the project. Now, as you can see, it includes a lot of people. Now, that kind of moves on swiftly of how do you identify your project stakeholders. Now, there's a lot of ways of doing that, but as you initiate your project, really getting engaged with the people who are involved in the project. A good method is RACI matrix, responsible, accountable, inform, and consult are the three areas. Which area do these individuals fall into? Sorry, and then you need to identify what role they play, what influence they have. Are they really key to a stakeholder? And one of the things you'll find is that as you get through the project, there'll be a lot of people who say they are important and have influence and really aren't the key influence of that project. And that's a skill you will learn as the more and more you do projects, to identifying who really makes a difference. But again, you also need to manage stakeholders, which I will go into a little bit detail. But there's ways you can do it. You can have internal meetings, discussion. Your scope of works will have that. Your PID, you'll define that. And as you speak to the wider team, you will identify your stakeholders. But a key part is really identifying who they are. Next is like understanding their roles and responsibilities in stakeholders. Now, they play a diverse role within project management. However, they have specific areas where they have an influence. And the best thing is really to discuss the responsibilities of the various stakeholders with your project sponsor, your client, team members, end users, and any kind of stakeholder has a direct influence on your project. That could be anybody, but the more you engage with them, understand what roles and responsibilities they need to play, and define that role with them, the easier it is for you to manage them, which is the next part that I will cover. And they're defining their roles and responsibilities is a key part of project management. Does a stakeholder is responsible for finance decisions, etc.? You need to know that if you're going to approve a deviation on your project, and there's a cost to that, they'll be need to improve. So you need to keep that engaged with them. Or there's a technical stakeholder who decides on the direction of your project, and says, actually, no, that's the wrong way of doing stuff. So you need to understand what role they play and what responsibility to take within your project. The next one is engaging and managing your stakeholders. Now, you've got to keep constant communication, always be in touch with your stakeholders and understand what role they play. Again, defining what their role they play, and then getting their feedback, which is a big one. Really getting them to feedback to you about what needs to be done, how you engage with people. They might know people that you need to engage with to help you move your project in the right direction. However, the negative side is also they can sometimes try and steer the ship in the wrong direction, and you sometimes need to correct that as well. Now, methods for managing and engaging with your stakeholders, managing it really via weekly meetings, daily discussions, whatever that might be, a daily stand-up, is you can do it in that manner, or you can do engagement through meetings, or a one-to-one. I've always found that one-to-one meetings where you are face-to-face is a lot easier and a lot more engaging, and you're able to build that rapport with the individual or individuals, and that rapport is key, because when you're in trouble, that's what's going to get you out of it. So have that. If you've got to have that rapport with that individual, and make sure that you have a good relationship with them, and that's really, really important. Which kind of moves on to the next bit, which kind of says that what influence and impact do stakeholders have? Now, there's positives and negatives, and there's a whole raft of things that they could do to derail your project, but also the whole raft of a load of things they could do to push your project in the right direction and keep you steering in the right direction to meet business demand, etc. Again, you need to manage that through various methods such as your RAID log or your RACI matrix, whatever that method might be. You need to make sure you are recording these things and understanding, because if when a stakeholder comes back and says, I want to do this, I want to do that, you have a record of that, and then you can either challenge or accept or mitigate, whichever way you want to do that. Now, I would just an example of where a stakeholder has a big influence is where I've done a project with a customer. It was a software delivery, but the end goal had changed. The stakeholder halfway through the project had given me an example, a touch base with me, sorry, and said, oh, actually, we need to change direction because of X, Y, and Z. We evaluated those, we went through those, and then we said, okay, well, we can accept items 1 to 3. We're comfortable with that, with the agreement, with the financial cost, what impact, what risk, and then bringing in other stakeholders to make sure that our decisions were validated. And then at the same time, I kick back to say, no, these changes aren't acceptable. There's too much cost, there's too much risk, and it could derail the project. And as a project manager, do not be afraid to challenge. And it's really, really important that you make sure your stakeholders, who are generally senior individuals or have an important role to play, can influence you, but you need to stop that from happening where necessary. So in summary, we've covered what a stakeholder is. Generally, a person or group of people or an organization, whatever it may be, has an influence on you. Identify your project stakeholders, define their roles and responsibilities, make sure you have a method to engage in managing stakeholders, and then make sure you manage how they influence and impact your project throughout the whole life cycle. Hope that was helpful, and thank you for listening.